Hey, welcome back to the channel, Brainiacs. Today we're covering a fun lesson about 1b3, the Nimzo-Larsen attack. This opening is actually top tier in my opinion. Many of the concepts important in the Nimzo-Larsen flow pretty naturally even for beginners. With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into 1b3, the Nimzo-Larsen. Modern chess is always unpredictable. I wanted e5, but the CPU gave me d5. A beginner-friendly component of this opening system is that our plans to fianchetto the dark square bishop early don't change. I play this move immediately. Now e5. The modern chess engine always disrupts the game early with big deployments in the center of the board. We've already changed the landscape in such a way that changes the dynamic of the Nimzo-Larsen forever. The book line continues e3. Then the CPU continues developing with knight to c6. Nothing out of the ordinary for the Nimzo-Larsen, but pay attention because this move is key. Traditionally, we want to pin this knight, so I do so. Even in modern chess, the pin looks pretty effective to me. Tank to c5 is the CPU working to clear things up since my bishop is actually very threatening here. But both sides can take it easy for now because my deeper intentions are to trade my light square bishop for this knight right away. Traditionally in the Nimzo-Larsen, this is a key trade which helps me to continue to dominate the dark squares in the center of the board. We'll see that I'm able to control this dark square diagonal as planned, but as it turns out, we learn that after castling kingside, then this dark square diagonal becomes the wrong area to focus on. The game continues. Knight to f3. Now we see d4, a pawn advancing. We can't see the troubles for me at this point in the game. I actually like my position and feel like I can break the center wide open. I'm ready to start capturing on these dark squares I've worked so hard to control. You can't see it yet, but soon we'll see how the CPU is able to successfully employ the same tactic as me, but much more effectively. The long diagonal towards the king side is the line of attack both players go for in this match. For white, I'm broadcasting exactly what I'm trying to do on the board for all eyes to see. For black, who by the way is a very powerful AI, the big attack hits with more stealth and surprise. After weighing some options, I castle kingside. Notice how the CPU's jet is in front of its king. If I can open up the e-file with my rook on it, then I can take advantage of this gain on tempo. I feel good about activating my rook, but watch how I'm no match for the Silibot. After tank to g6, we can see the match begin to take a different tone. Tank to g6 is both offensive and defensive. It's highly efficient. Here we begin to see a simple attack lining up. I call it a simple attack because it's an attack I'm able to understand. I can understand that this file is now controlled by the tank. I must be careful with the sniper of a bishop on c8, and I'm prepared to see that bishop take g4 for a pin, perhaps h3 even. Because I understand the attack, I thought I could thwart it, but we'll see that however simple this threat is super powerful. In fact, so powerful that it ultimately wins. After jet to c6, I think this is a beautiful looking position. I prefer to play with my big guns reserved in the back. The CPU, however, prefers to play with its big guns out front. We've already seen a lot of dynamism, and despite having all 16 pawns still on the board with multiple tanks and jets deployed, the game doesn't feel cluttered at all. I feel like I'm ready to start going on the offensive. I capture, pawn takes d4, hoping to make good use of my rook along the king's file. Bishop to g4 is the pin we knew could potentially be played. So now what does it look like when we actually have to face it? Now Brainiacs in the audience, you can pause the position right here and figure out a better move than the one I played. To me, this position looks totally playable, but my next move just didn't provide the fruits I was looking for. In retrospect, playing rook to e1 immediately might have saved me, but here I think I blunder by capturing with my pawn takes e5. Then we see queen to d5. To the average player like me, we might be wondering, what's wrong about capturing now? Don't we have good piece development, central control, tempo, etc.? To the professional player, the answer is because checkmate, that's why. Capturing now is wrong because you'll then be facing checkmate. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a closer look. I deploy on d2 because now we have 4 of black's pieces all loading up on one square f3 after tank to g5. 3 of the 4 pieces involved are very powerful, so I should have recognized this danger earlier in the game because this threat isn't the same if the attacking body was made up of just knights, bishops, and pawns. No, I made the mistake of thinking this attack was just on my knight, worth 3 points. I thought at worst maybe I lose 3 points and play on. I can play down 3 points if I'm up a tempo and have a clear line of attack. So I deploy on d2 thinking my tank can reinforce this knight, but also it can jump in to attack many pieces on the center of the board. It's not enough defense for me because, as I mentioned before, this attack isn't actually going after my knight. The attack is on the king, and I'm beginning to see this. I'm in real danger of losing the match. Here we can begin to see that I really can't escape even if I sacrifice my knight. I can threaten all the powerful pieces, but I can't threaten the king. What we see when the 3 versus 4 plays out after queen captures f3 is that the threat of tank to h3 check is just too much. I could block the checkmate from the queen, but then the CPU's tank was planted for checkmate on h3. In the finale, we see why the threat is different with tanks and jets. After tank to g6 much earlier in the game, on move 7, I was never able to mount a strong enough defense for my king. More importantly, perhaps I chose the direction of play too early instead of optimizing for the ability to remain more nimble. I had early intentions of opening up the e-file, but I hesitated on that instead of acting on that, and so I ended up playing on the back foot. I became the one responding to attacks. I think that by not castling, Black was able to more than make up for the tempo disadvantage by instead having all of its pieces directed at a more important square on the chessboard. This square f3 is worth the entire game. With jet captures h3 played, that's all she wrote. Good game. I think it's so cool how the jet can checkmate this way. There's some unique endgame sequences that are only possible with the jet. So whenever I see a checkmate like this, I think it's a little bit like modern chess poetry in motion. Go have some fun with it for yourself at www.modernchess.net. It's totally free, as is my channel, so please like and subscribe for the work on the videos. That's all I've got for today. There's plenty in the pipeline coming your way. Modern Chess for the Advanced Player series continues on the next episode. Until next time, HODLPawns, over and out.